Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Samech Tes Amud Aleph, 69a of Maseches Kiddushin, and we are starting a brand new parak, a new chapter, the fourth and final chapter of Maseches Kiddushin, parak Asara Yuchsim. And so we begin from 10 lines down on the page, 10 lines from the bottom, or 9 lines. Beginning of the new chapter. Says the Mishnah, Asara Yuchsim alu mi Bavel. 10 Yuchsim, 10 different lineage types went up from Bavel, from Babylonia, with Ezra. This is referring to right after the Second Temple was, the original Second Temple was completed. Shortly after that, Ezra, one of the leaders of the Jewish people in Babylonia, Persia, he went up to Eretz Yisrael, to Israel, and with him he brought these 10 different lineages. And we'll discuss what that means, he brought them up, or why he brought them up, what he was doing. So, but what are the 10 different lineages? Kohani, Levi, Yisraeli. There's Kohanim, there's Leviim, Levites, and Yisraelim. There's Chalali. Chalali are like Chalalim, those who come from Kohanic families, but have been but it's if a Kohen was in a forbidden relationship, then the child would be a Chalal, and their descendants potentially could also be Chalal, will be disqualified from Kahuna, and from eating from the special things that Kohanim get to eat. So that's the fourth. Then we have Giri, Gerim, we have converts, that's number 5. Vicharuri, we have freed slaves, who are also Canaanite slaves. Once they're freed, they are converts. That's number 6. Mamziri, we have Mamzerim, which we discussed in the previous chapter. We have Nesini are the Givonim, those who converted. Rashi says here during, I think there's a question exactly who it refers to, but Rashi says it refers to those the Givonim who converted in the days of Yoshua, and it was questionable conversion, and they are of questionable status, basically. Then we have Shtuki Va'asufi, and lastly we have something called Shtuki and something called Asufi, which the Mishnah actually at the end is going to tell us what they are, but they're basically Suffolk. They're those who are possibly Mamzerim, but we're not sure, and the Mishnah will tell us why in a few lines. Now, of these different lineages, these different groups of people, so some are allowed to marry some but not others, and the Mishnah tells us who can marry who. So it says, Kohani, Levi, Yisraeli, Mutar, Lavo, Zebazet. Kohanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim are allowed to marry each other, basically unrestricted. There's certain Kohanim can't marry someone who's divorced or like that, but basically it's okay for Kohanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim to marry each other from those families. Levi, Yisraeli, Chalali, Geri, V'charuri, Mutarin, Labazebazeh. Then you have Leviim, Yisraelim, Chalalim, which are disqualified Kohanim, Gerim, converts, and Charuri, and the freed slaves who are also converts, are all allowed to marry each other. But who did we leave out here? We left the Kohanim off the list, because Kohanim cannot marry Chalalim. They can't marry from disqualified Kohanim. They can't marry converts. They can't marry, this is the male Kohanim, cannot marry converts, and they cannot marry freed slaves who are also converts. But Leviim and Yisraelim can. So all these are allowed to marry each other. Then we have Giri, Vicharuri, Mamziri, Unesini, Shtuki, Vasufi, Kul Mutarim Labo Zebazeh. So this Mishnah holds, we had it as a question on our earlier daf, but this Mishnah holds that converts are allowed to marry Mamzerim, and the way the prohibition for Mamzerim is expressed is Lo Yavo Mamzer B'Kahal Hashem. A Mamzer cannot join the Kahal, the Kehila, congregation of Hashem, and there's an opinion that our Mishnah holds that the Kahal Gerim is not considered Kahal. It's again not that they're not Jewish, but they don't fall in this category of Kahal. They don't have that status. Whatever it is to be Kahal, that they don't have according to this Mishnah, and therefore they are allowed to marry mamzerim. So on this list, the Mishnah has converts, freed slaves who are converts, mamzerim, and nisinim, who are also those of that questionable status of their conversion, shtuki and asufi, which again are, the Mishnah is going to tell us now what they are. Kula mutarim labo zeh, they're all allowed to marry each other. Ve'eluhem shtuki, and now the Mishnah says, and what is a shtuki? A shtuki is kol shehu makir es imo ve'eno makir es aviv. Somebody who knows who his mother is, but he doesn't know who his father is. I guess he or she, they don't know who their father is. So, and the way Rashi says it, why does he call it a shtuki? Shtuki means like to silence. So if the mother isn't willing to tell us apparently who the father is, and if the child calls somebody father, the mother silences the child. That's why it's called a shtuki. We don't know who the father is. It's being kept secret. But since we don't know who the father is, so it could be this child is a mamzer. So therefore, they have this suffix status. There's this doubt. Now, why are they then allowed to marry a mamzer? Because a mamzer is not allowed to marry a regular Jew, and this person might be a regular Jew. We don't know. They might be a mamzer, they might not. So, as we'll see, the Gemara later is going to tell us that the prohibition for a mamzer to marry into kahal is only vada kahal. It's only if somebody is certainly from the kahal, but if it's of a question, then they are allowed to marry them. So a mamzer can actually marry a suffix mamzer, someone who we're not sure if they're a mamzer or not. And then we have, the Mishnah says, asufi. And what's an asufi? The last category, kol shenesaf min hashuk ve'eno makir lo es aviv v'lo es imo. An asufi is a child we find in the marketplace, an orphan child by themselves. There is no mother and no father. We don't know who the mother or father is. So then again we have this question: who are they? Who is this child? Is it a mamzer? Is it not? And since it's a question, the child is allowed to marry a mamzer because we don't know. Because a mamzer is allowed to marry a suffix, someone who we don't know for sure if they're part of kahal. Abba Shaul haya koreh l'shtuki beduki. The Mishnah concludes that Abba Shaul called a shtuki a beduki. Now the Gemara later will tell us what he was saying, but beduki comes from the word baduk, check it out, to check. And the idea seems to be that right, the shtuki we said was we know who the mother is, we don't know who the father is, so we consider the child in doubt. He's saying that if the mother tells us that the child is kosher and that the father was a valid relationship and not someone that would make the child a mamzer, even if she doesn't tell us who it is, according to Abba Shaul, we can believe her. Beduki means we can check him out. As long as we can check him out and she approves him, so then he's not a suffix mamzer, he's a regular Jew. Okay, so those are the 10 categories of lineage and who can marry who. Says the Gemara, Asara Yuchsav Alu mi Bavel. So 10 Yuchsav, 10 different lineages went up from Bavel. Ma'irya Datani Alu mi Bavel. Why does it say that they went up from Bavel? Alu mi Bavel. Nisni Holchul Eretz Yisrael. It should say they went to Eretz Yisrael. Why does it matter that they came from Bavel? Just say 10 lineages went into the land of Israel. At the second temple, beginning of the second Beis Hamikdash, second temple. Why does it say they went up from Bavel? Says the Gemara, Milsa agav urchi kamashmalan. This Mishnah is teaching us something along the way. In addition to teaching us the 10 different categories and the who can marry who, but it's also telling us something else on the way, which is Kiddutanya, as we learn in a Brisa. There is a pasuk that says, and I think it's talking about if you have a question, so you should get up and go up to the place that Hashem has chosen, which is the Beis Hamikdash, which is where the Sanhedrin sat. Melamed, this teaches that Beis Hamikdash gavoa mikol Eretz Yisrael. That the Beis Hamikdash is the highest place in Eretz Yisrael. Ve'eretz Yisrael gavoa mikol ha'aratzos. And it also teaches that Eretz Yisrael is the highest place of all the lands. Okay, I don't know how that works, with the exact topography, I guess is the right word. It could be there's a deeper meaning over here. But that's what the Gemara says. The Beis Hamikdash is the highest point of Eretz Yisrael, and Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, is the highest point over all other lands. Now, the Gemara asks that from that pasuk that it quoted, we don't see all of that. He says, "Bishlama Beis Hamikdash gavo mikol Eretz Yisrael." I understand, it makes sense that you're saying you see from the pasuk that the Beis Hamikdash is the highest point, because it says that if you'll have a question, you should get up and go up to the Beis Hamikdash. So we see the Beis Hamikdash is up, is the highest point. Hainu dichsiv, that's what it means. Divrei rivos bisharecha, if you have an argument, the kamtav elisa, you should get up and go up to the Beis Hamikdash, because you're bisharecha, you're in the land of Israel. That's what it says in the pasuk. If you'll have an argument in your gates, meaning in the land of Israel, then you should go up to the Beis Hamikdash. So the Beis Hamikdash is the highest point in the land of Israel. Fine, we can grant it. But Ella Eretz Yisrael gavo mikol haratzos min alan. But ask the Gemara, how do I know that Eretz Yisrael is the highest point of all the lands? Where do you see that? You don't see that in this pasuk. So where do we know that from? So says the Gemara Dichsiv, we can learn it from the following pasuk in Sefer Yirmiyah, Jeremiah. It says, L'chein hinei yamim ba'im nom Hashem. Therefore, days are coming, says Hashem, Lo yomar od chai Hashem asher helas b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. He will no longer say, long live Hashem, who has brought b'nei Yisrael up from the land of Mitzrayim, from the land of Egypt. Ki'im, rather, people will say, chai Hashem. Long live Hashem asher hele, who brought up, Vasher Haviim, who brought this b'nei Yisrael, me'eretz Tzafon, from the northern land, meaning Babylonia, Umikol ha'aratzos, and from all the lands asher hidachtim sham, that he has scattered them, so, or pushed them. So it says here that they will say, long live Hashem who has brought them up from all the lands. So we see that Eretz Yisrael is up from all the lands. So our question was, why does the Mishnah say that 10 Yuchsim Alu mi Bavel went up from Bavel? Why didn't it just say they went to Eretz Yisrael? The answer the Gemara is telling us is that Agav Orche, on the way, it's adding, it's teaching us another idea that Eretz Yisrael is considered up. That you go up from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael. Okay. But my Irya Detani Alu mi Bavel. But still, why does it say they went up from Bavel? From Babylonia. Nisni Alu Eretz Yisrael. Let it say they went up to Israel. I understand why it says they went up. It wants to tell us that Eretz Yisrael is up. But why does it say they went up from Bavel? Why not say that they went up to Eretz Yisrael? By the way, Nosa Agavorche, on the way we can mention that that seemingly is where the term Aliyah comes from. To make Aliyah, to go up, to move to Eretz Yisrael, you're going up. Going up spiritually. But there's this concept here that Eretz Yisrael is considered the highest place. That's why it's Aliyah. Okay. So, says the Gemara, so our question is, why does it say they went up to Eretz Yisrael? Why doesn't it say they went up to Eretz Yisrael? Why does it say they went up from Bavel? Says the Gemara, Misayeh le Rabbi Elazar. This Mishnah and this terminology would be a siyua, a backing for a proof for the opinion of Rabbi Elazar. De'amar Rabbi Elazar, who says, Lo Allah Ezra mi Bavel ad sha'asa kisoles nikia va'Allah. That Ezra did not leave Bavel until he made it into clean flour, and then he went up. So the reason why it said the 10 Yuchsim went up from Bavel was it wanted to stress this point that there was a cleansing of Bavel, of Babylonia, going on here. Now, what was going on? What's this whole thing? They went up from Bavel. Ezra brought them up. What was going on? So Rashi elaborates for us, and Rashi tells us that Ezra wanted to cleanse Babylonia of anyone of a diminished status. All of these, we have Kohen, Levi, Yisrael. Those are the normal ones. Gerim, converts, normal. But there's a mamzer and halal Nesinim, and all of these things, they are of diminished status and forbidden to marry for many, and what happened was Ezra saw that there was intermarriage going on, meaning that people weren't being careful about who they were allowed to marry and who not, and the problem was that there wasn't really an authority left in Bavel, a rabbinic authority left in Bavel to oversee it and to ensure that the marriages were proper. In Eretz Yisrael, there was rabbinic authority, and so therefore, he separated out anyone who was of diminished status, who had problematic yichus lineage, of problematic lineage, and he brought them with him to Eretz Yisrael, and at least for that first generation, it helped because people understood that they were, when they came to Eretz Yisrael, these people were of problematic lineage. And Rashi says, although the Gemara is going to discuss it a bit, but even for future generations, there was the Sanhedrin there. There was rabbinic authority who would try to verify the yichus, the lineage of people before allowing them to marry. So the idea of saying in the Mishnah, "Alu mi Bavel," they went from Bavel, was to tell us that that Ezra was cleansing Bavel to leave it free of anybody of problematic lineage, because there was nobody there to oversee that the marriages were being done in a permitted fashion. Okay, first line on the page says the Gemara Itmar. It was said, Abaye Amar Alu me'eleim. Abaye says they went up on their own. They went up willingly, voluntarily. Alu me'eleim tanan. Right? It says Alu mi'bavel. They went up. It sounds like they went up on their own. Virava Amar He'elum. But Rava says no. What it means really is he brought them up. He forced them to leave Babylonia. He'elum tanan. And says the Gemara, become Miflugi b'Rabbi Elazar. We can understand that their argument revolves around what we just quoted from Rabbi Elazar. To Amar Rabbi Elazar, that Rabbi Elazar said, Lo Allah Ezra mi Bavel acha asa kisoles nikiya va'Allah. That Ezra only went up from Bavel after he had cleansed the Bavel to make it like fine flour. Meaning he took out all the psoas, all of the unrefined parts, all those who had problematic lineage. Abaye Leslie Rabbi Elazar explains the Gemara. Abaye doesn't hold with Rabbi Elazar. Doesn't hold that that's what Ezra did, and therefore he just says they went up on their own. Ezra didn't bring them up. They went up on their own. Why? Not sure, but we'll see in a moment maybe why, but not clear why. Rava Islay Rabbi Elazar. Rava holds of Rabbi Elazar. That's why Rava says no, they didn't go up on their own. He'elum. Ezra brought them up. He forced them to come because he was trying to cleanse Bavel of anyone with problematic lineage. That's one approach. Or if you want, you could say Dekuliyama Islu Rabbi Elazar. It could be no. Even Abaye holds of Rabbi Elazar. Both Abaye and Rava agree to Rabbi Elazar, and they agree that Ezra engineered a cleansing process of the lineage of people in Babylonia. The Hachaba Kamiflagi, but they are arguing about the following: Mar Savar Afrushi Afrushinu Uminafshayu Saliku. One holds, being Abaye holds, they went up on their own. But Ezra separated them out. Ezra first separated them, and he said these people. He identified whoever had problematic yichus in Bavel, whoever had problematic lineage, and then people wouldn't want to marry them. So, because they can't. So they said, okay, we're leaving. And they went up on their own. They went to Eretz Yisrael on their own. That's the opinion of Abaye. And Umar Savar, and the other opinion is, Rava holds Baal Karchayu Asukenu, that he forced them to go up. They didn't go up voluntarily. He forced them. He forced them to move back to move to Eretz Yisrael, move back to Eretz Yisrael. Okay, says the Gemara, Bishlama Laman Amar Alu. It makes sense according to the opinion that they went on their own. Hainu Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. That would fit in with the teaching of Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Shmuel, who says, Kol haratzos isa le'eretz Yisrael, ve'eretz Yisrael isa leBavel. All the lands are like an isa, like a mixed dough compared to Eretz Yisrael, and Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, is like a mixed dough compared to Bavel. Meaning, what's a mixed dough? A mixed dough as opposed to fine flour, right? Fine flour, there's nothing mixed in. It's just the flour. So that describes Bavel. It was just flour. Everybody was of kosher lineage, and the people with problematic lineage were gone. So that was the fine flour. Eretz Yisrael, compared to Bavel, was Isa. It was mixed, because all these people moved to Eretz Yisrael. And now you have people with problematic lineage mixed into the society. So Eretz Yisrael was like Isa, was like a dough, a mixed dough, in terms of lineage and being able to marry them, compared to Bavel. And the rest of the world is like is like a mixed dough compared to Eretz Yisrael, because at least in Eretz Yisrael they had rabbinic authority overseeing, and although there were people of problematic lineage, but there was oversight. So yes, they got mixed in a little bit, but there was oversight. In other lands, there was no oversight. So they were like in other lands were like a mixed dough compared to Eretz Yisrael, and something that people of Eretz Yisrael would be concerned about. So the Gemara is saying, if you understand that the people from Bavel that Ezra identified as problematic lineage went to Eretz Yisrael on their own, so then it makes sense that we would call Eretz Yisrael an Isa, mixed dough, because they went on their own. They just mixed into the society and they're lost, and it's like a mixed dough. But but according to the opinion that he brought them up, that he made them go up, so made yadinu. So then people knew who they were. They were identifiable, meaning they were coming because of their lineage, clearly, and so they should have been identifiable within society. So why would Eretz Yisrael be called an Isa, be called a mixed dough? So the Gemara explains, Nehi diyadi lahu dara. It's true, although they were known to that generation, that first generation, but the dar achrini lo yadi, but the subsequent generations they wouldn't have been known, and so subsequent generations they were like an Isa, like a mixed dough compared to Bavel, meaning even according to the opinion that Ezra brought them up, and so they were known who they were. He forced them to come, and they were known who they were for the first generation. But after that, it's over time that knowledge would have become lost or confused, and so they became treated like an Isa, like a dough, compared to the pure lineages of Babylonia. Okay, Bishlama Lamad Amar Alu. It makes sense, according to the opinion that they went on their own. Hainu Dechsiv. Then we can understand the pasuk in Sefer Ezra, the verse that says, "V'akabtzem el hanahar." So Ezra says, "I gathered them to the river." These are people that were going back to Eretz Yisrael with him. He says, "I gathered them by the river." Haba el Achava, that was near Achava. V'nachna sham yamim shloshem. We camped there for 3 days. V'avina ba'am, and I investigated into the people, into the nation, uvakohanim, and amongst the Kohanim, u'bnei Levi, lo matzasi sham, and I couldn't find any Kohanim or bnei Levi there. So if you say, so he was looking into who they were, and he didn't find any Leviim. Now, if you say Alu, that they went up on their own, so then it makes sense. Avina ba'am, I investigating into the people, because he wasn't the one who brought them. But if you say that he brought them, Elam and Amar Halum, but according to the opinion that he was bringing them up, Hamizar Zahiri, he was careful who they were. He should have known who was with him. He chose the people out, and so why does he have to investigate into who they are? It's already been done. These are the people he chose. So the Gemara explains, Nahid izhor b'psulem b'kisherim lo izdahor. although he was careful about the psulim, it's true he chose who the psulim, those of problematic lineage, he had chosen out. He knew who they were, but b'ksherim lo izdavar. He didn't choose the ksherim, those of kosher lineage who came, and there were also people of kosher lineage who were coming up with him. And that's what he was investigating. He was trying to figure out, were there any Kohanim or Leviim amongst the people. Now Rashi actually tells us a whole interesting background here, that the Leviim, when they first went into Galus, into exile, so, or maybe later as well, so they were asked by Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylonia, to sing the songs. The Leviim are the singers and the musicians, and they were asked by Nebuchadnezzar to sing the songs of Zion, Shir lanu mishir Tzion, and instead they refused, and they cut off their thumbs so that they wouldn't be able to play any instrument. They bit them off, actually, and refused to sing. But that also made it that now, when they're coming back, they were disqualified from serving. They weren't able to play the music, and so that's all he could find, though. So there were Leviim that came back, but only the ones who were that dedicated, they bit off their thumbs. The ones who were not as dedicated, they just stayed back in Babylonia, where things were comfortable. In Eretz Yisrael, it was a new settlement. They were very poor, and it was very hard. And only some people came back, but the most dedicated. But many of the Kohanim and Leviim decided to stay in exile. Okay, so fine. But anyways, he had amongst his group some ksherim, people of proper lineage, but the pasuk recounts that he didn't know who they were, and who was a Levi, who wasn't. I guess he could check the thumbs. He was looking maybe for Leviim who had thumbs. He didn't find any. Okay. So now the Gemara starts to examine the Mishnah further. It says, Kahani Levi v'Yisraeli. So we know it says that 10 lineages went up from Babel, including Kohanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim. So Minalan Disliko. How do we know that they went back, that there were Kohanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim went back? Tichsiv, because the pasuk says, this is a pasuk in Ezra, Vayeshvu HaKohanim v'Leviim u'min ha'am ha'mishorim v'Shoarim v'Anesiim b'Areim v'Chol Yisrael b'Areim. It says that they dwell in their cities. They went back and dwell in their cities. The Kohanim, the Leviim, and from the nation, the Mishorarim, the musicians, and those who stood by the gates, the Nesinim, which was the Givonim, in their cities in Eretz Yisrael. So we see Kohanim and Leviim went back, and also Yisraelim, it says Min ha'am, from the nation. Now it's interesting, it refers to the Mishorarim and the Shoarim. The Mishorarim are the musicians, and the Shoarim are the gate guarders. Now those are two jobs usually done by the Leviim. But here it says Min ha'am, from the nation. Now again, according to the Maharsha, that goes back to this idea that the Leviim that came back were not able to do their jobs because they didn't have any thumbs. Okay. Then the Mishnah said, Chalali, Giri, v'Charuri. That the Chalalim came, the disqualified Kohanim came back, Gerim, converts, and Charuri, freed slaves. So the Gemara asks, Chalali minalan. How do we know that there were Chalalim, disqualified Kohanim, that came back? Ditanya, because we're learning a Brisa. And again, a Chalal is a disqualified Kohen because he's the product of a marriage between a Kohen and somebody who's not allowed to marry, like a divorcee, for example. So how do we know that Chalalim came back? Ditani, because we're learning a Brisa. Rabbi Yossi Omer. Rabbi Yossi says, Gedola Chazaka. The power of Chazaka is very great. Chazaka means that something is established. And when something is established, we assume the status quo unless something happens to say otherwise. So he says Chazaka is very strong. Shenemar, because the pasuk says, and this is again is a series of psukim in the book of Ezra. It says U'minei Kohanim, and from amongst the children of the Kohanim, the Bnei Chavia, Bnei Hakot, Bnei Barzilai, these different families, Asher Lakach Mimenos Barzilai Hagiladi Isha, who took from amongst the daughters of Barzillai HaGiladi a wife, Vayikarei al Shemam, and were called on their names, Ele Bikshu Ksavam Hamisyachsim, V'lo so they looked for their writings that had their yichus, that had their lineage, meaning, I don't know if these were marriage documents or just rabbinical documents that were signed attesting to their yichus and the fact that they were kosher kohanim, so, and they couldn't find them. So they couldn't verify that they had maintained kosher yichus kosher lineage while in Babylonia. Vayigoalu min hakahuna, and they were ejected from service as kohanim. Vayomer ha-tirshasa, and the wine server said to them, but it refers to Nehemiah. Rashi explains, I think Rashi, that Nehemiah served wine to the king of Babylonia, so or maybe to the Persian king, whoever it was, and therefore he was called the wine man. So he said, Nehemiah said, that's what he's calling a Sefer Ezra, though he's called Ha-Tirshasa, and he said, Lohem, to them, Asher lo yochu mikodesh HaKadoshim ad amot kohen le'urim v'tumim, that you can't eat from the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the holy meats, until a Kohen with the Urim V'Tumim, with the Kohen special breastplate and the Urim V'Tumim inside, until he comes, you can't eat from the holy meats. Now that's like saying, Rashi says, until Mashiach comes, which unfortunately sometimes means a while, right? So basically he's saying it's not going to happen until Mashiach comes, basically. Until a Kohen with the Urim V'Tumim comes, we can't verify. The Urim V'Tumim could be used to verify their yichus. It was a way that you can ask questions to Hashem. And until we get it, then you can't eat from the karbanos, the holy meats. And so that's what he told these Kohanim that couldn't verify their yichus, their lineage, and they might be chalalim and can't eat. Now already from that we see that chalalim came back, or potential chalalim, and that's really the proof already. Minalim, from where do we know chalalim came back? From there. But the Gemara is still discussing this because we started with the statement, Gedola Chazaka. How great is Chazaka? An established status. So the Gemara elaborates and says, Va'amar lahem. So what Nehemiah said to them was, Harei atem b'chazkaschem. But you still maintain your chazaka. You maintain your status, your established state. And b'ma ha'yisem ochem begola. What were you eating while in Galus? B'kadshei hagavul. You were still able to eat the holy things of the borders, meaning from the fields, meaning truma. You were still allowed to eat truma, which is special for Kohanim only, and a chalal cannot eat it. So afkanami b'kadshei hagavul. So now here too will allow you to eat kadshei hagavul, the holy foods of the borders, as opposed to kadshei hakadashim, the holy meats. So the Gemara basically infers, Nehemiah said to them, you can't eat from the holy meats until you prove your yichus. But the implication is, but you could eat from the holy things from the borders, meaning from the fields, meaning truma. You could eat that. So you see, look how great Chazaka is, since they ate truma in Bavel still, while in exile, so they were able to eat truma, continue to eat truma in Eretz Yisrael. Now, the Gemara says, but that's a problem. But there's a problem. There's an opinion that says that if you see a Kohen eating truma, so you can assume that he's a kosher Kohen, because a chalal can't eat truma. So according to that opinion, how are they allowed to eat truma? Somebody's going to see them eat truma and say, oh, they must be a kosher Kohen. But the whole point here was that they were at least, there was a concern that they didn't have good yichus, they didn't have good lineage, and they were chalalim. So the Gemara says, no, shani hasam dereach kasayu. No, there it's different, because there they had something affecting them, something diminishing their status, which was they were not allowed to eat the karbanos. So, since it was known that they couldn't eat the karbanos, so nobody would confuse and mistakenly think, oh, if they could eat truma, they must be kosher kohanim, because it was set out they can't eat from the karbanos. So there, that wasn't a concern. Okay, but still, ve'lamai gidola chazaka. But what did the statement that we started with here, Yossi had said, gidola chazaka. Chazaka is so great. The ability to follow an established status is so great. What was so great, the Gemara asks? What's gidola chazaka? Let him just say, chazaka is something you can rely on. What was so great about the chazaka here? So the Gemara suggests, what was so great about the chazaka was that in Bavel, outside of Israel, the truma was only rabbinic. The requirement to separate truma was only a rabbinic requirement, and when they came to Israel, it's a biblical requirement. And yet the chazaka held, since they were allowed to eat rabbinic truma, the truma which only had a status as truma midrabanan by rabbinic law, yet based on that they allowed them to continue to eat truma in Eretz Yisrael, which had biblical status, deoraisa status. That's Gidola Chazaka. Look how great the power of Chazaka is. They even were elevated in what they were allowed to eat based on the Chazaka. Now the Gemara will continue with an Ibai Sema with another explanation for what was so great about the Chazaka, Gidola Chazaka. We'll do that next time. But just to come back to where we're holding right now in terms of the Mishnah, we were proving that there were chalalim that came from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, because these were the chalalim. These were at least a chashash, a concern that they were chalalim, because they did not allow them to eat from the karbanos because they couldn't prove their yichus, they couldn't prove their lineage. We'll continue here next time.